let's see what their impressions are of the
Before we
DLC.
start this preview proper, a couple of quick notes. All of the footage that you're seeing here was provided by Bandai Namco, as I was not allowed to capture my own footage from the preview event. Also, let's start with the spoiler warning, because I know that discovery is one of the core elements of Elden Ring. So if you don't want any of that discovery compromised by hearing me talk about the things I found during my preview time, the TLDR of this preview is, it was awesome. It was like playing Elden Ring again for the first time, but with an endgame character in a brand new open world. Alright, now let's get to the preview. There was something magical about that first playthrough of Elden Ring, when everything was new and there was a prevailing sense of discovery and awe as I rode through the lands between, stumbling upon the horrors of Caelid,
Whoa.
the beautiful vistas of Limgrave and Liurnia, and the treasures that awaited after a challenging dungeon. Which is why my 3 hours with Elden Ring's DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, was so exciting, because it felt like I was playing Elden Ring again for the first time, in a brand new realm to explore, with new discoveries, new surprises, new gear, and you'd better believe new challenges, even despite my provided 150 level character with endgame level gear. My 3-hour play session began at the Cocoon of the Empyrean Site of Grace, which is where you do battle with the optional boss battle, Mohg, the Lord of Blood. But this time, there was an NPC named Leda there as well, who asked me if I too was beckoned by Miquella. By examining the cocoon with Miquella's withered arm ominously hanging out, I was whisked away to the Realm of Shadow. It's hard to get a sense for just how big the Realm of Shadow actually is, but I will say that my first steps out into it were definitely reminiscent of the first time I emerged from the elevator and opened the doors into Limgrave. There were obvious areas of interest right from the get-go for me to explore, like a crypt that was directly to my left, some scorched ruins directly up ahead, a large castle off in the distance, and the towering flaming brazier enemy from the trailer roaming around just on the horizon. Of course, in
Kicking
true
fire
Elden
at
Ring
you.
fashion, the very first enemy I encountered ended up murdering me, as if to reassure me that despite my level 150 character with a plus 25 strength
That's
scaled
Souls-like
axe,
games.
along with 80 points allocated to strength, this DLC wasn't going to be a cakewalk for people with endgame builds
Cool,
that
you
have
get
run
that
out of
dual
things to
wield.
challenge them in the base game. It wasn't even a boss, it was just a random enemy that decided to drop down from above while I was exploring some ruins, with its dual-wielded chakrams that kept me tumbling backwards as I tried to dodge its twirling dance that never seemed to end. Once I got my revenge and a couple of paltry 1,000 runes for my trouble, again, this was just a normal run-of-the-mill enemy, I made a break down the beaten path and wound up at the first big dungeon of the DLC, Bellerat. The ultimate goal of the DLC is to follow Miquella's crosses, which essentially act as Miquella's footprints and signpost the plot-critical path. The first one I found also came with a message that read, "The Gate of Divinity lies in the tower sealed by shadow. That is surely where kind Miquella is headed. We are no Empyreans, but we must locate the path that will lead us there. I will follow the crosses east." Bellerat itself was a fairly large dungeon that was somewhere between the size of something like Stormvale Castle and Castle Morn. It wasn't
Jesus.
quite the size of a legacy dungeon from the main game, but it's still pretty
That's like
lengthy
a
and filled
whole
with plenty of
level
optional
right
side
there.
paths, many of which I didn't get the opportunity to fully explore. It was a fortress filled with all sorts of new nasties, from scorpions of both small and gigantic varieties, to relatively weak guards that like to hide around corners waiting to ambush me, to grave birds that sat perched on ramparts, to heavily armored knights with giant weapons that would occasionally
A
use shoulder
mini
charges to
Deathbird
bash me
character.
from 15 feet away.
Oh, wow, look at this movement. Oh my god.
Every enemy I fought was a new encounter for me to learn, which was an exciting challenge.
Look at
to
his
overcome.
movement. Oh, look at that attack.
The boss of Bellerat is one that you
A
no
lot to
doubt
do, a
will
lot
remember if
of
you watch
new
the reveal
weapons.
trailer.
Oh, this
It's
is
called
this
the
is what
Divine Beast,
I love
Dancing
about
Lion.
games.
It was a difficult
Especially
fight, and one that
DLCs, added
required
new
me to
stuff
make
to
use
the
of one
game.
of the new summons in Shadow of the Erdtree, Black Knight Commander Andreas, along with swapping my weapon from the heavy-hitting Fire Knight's Fire Greatsword to the much more nimble Backhand Blade, which allowed me to hit and run much more easily. Perhaps the coolest aspect of this particular boss was the fact that its second phase has it alternating between ice and lightning power-ups, forcing you to also have to contend with either random lightning strikes or massive AoE ice attacks that build up frostbite, on top of also avoiding his heavy-hitting attacks. Eventually, I prevailed, gaining the lion's head to wear as a helmet, horrifying but cool, along with his remembrance, and then moved on to the second main dungeon, Castle Encest. This place reminded me much more of the Caria Manor, minus, the horrifying hand monsters. There were lots of magic-wielding enemies,
Oh
including
yeah,
a
I hate the
giant O'Brien
hand,
armor that was very much
the
like
hand
Bowles from one
monsters
of those
in
Everjail boss fights,
Korean.
and an extremely difficult Korean knight that brought to mind the fight against the enemy that guarded Renala's chamber in the Academy of Raya Lucaria. Fitting because this enemy guarded a boss named Rolana. Rolana was definitely the hardest boss to take down during the preview window, combining fearsome melee sword skills with extremely powerful magic attacks. In her second phase, her two swords would be imbued with red and blue flames, giving them all the attacks that would set the arena
he has
and make her
that
attacks extremely difficult to get out of the
enemy
way.
has
And just when I thought I would have
what's
the
his
win in the
face's
bag, she would float up into the
ability.
sky and cast a version of Renala's full moon that would crash
Godfrey?
into the ground for
Not
3
Godfrey.
devastating shockwaves that could
The first
basically
Elden Lord, I
one-shot me
forgot
from
his
full
name.
health. If it isn't clear already, Shadow of the Erdtree is hard, but you're not left completely without a lifeline. Scattered throughout the realm of Shadow are scattered tree fragments that can be brought back to a site of grace and turned in, much like you would a sacred tear or golden seed. These fragments will decrease the amount of damage that enemies deal to you, but only while you're in the realm of Shadow.
Bullshit
in addition
enemies.
to that, you can also find revered Spirit Ash blessings, which can be turned in the same
Ooh,
way.
what is that?
These will instead increase the amount of damage dealt by your spirit summons. While I didn't get to
Oh,
explore the optional
potions.
paths as much as I would have liked during my 3 hours of playtime, I still managed to find plenty of brand new weapons, talismans, armor
Jump
sets,
scares abound,
cookbooks,
exactly.
crafting guides, and even an ancient dragon smithing stone. The new weapons were really cool too, with some really unique properties and weapon arts that made them behave quite differently from anything else in the main game. The heavy smith script axe, for instance, could be thrown with the press of the heavy attack button,
Oh
without
yeah.
any sort of cost or resource tied to it, making it very effective
Bro,
both
look at
at
this.
distance and close up. The Milady has a weapon art that puts you into a stance with your arm outstretched to the side, and from the stance you can do a number of cool follow-ups, like a leaping and lunging stab attack that's very similar to what Melania can do. The backhand blade can be split into 2 swords when you dual wield it, and has a super sick weapon skill that has you dashing to an enemy's side
Ooh.
to stab them in the ribs. I
That's
felt
cool.
like I accomplished a lot in my 3 hours of playtime with Shadow of the
And
Erdtree.
that's just like
But
the
even
first 3
then,
hours. There's
it felt
probably
like there
more
was so
abilities.
much left on the table. Right when my time ended, I was just about to explore a path marked by another one of Miquella's crosses that led down into what seemed like another one of From Software's famous poison swamps. And just by listening in on
we
other
getting
players
poison
at the
swamps
event,
now.
it was clear that I missed at least one other dungeon with a seemingly exciting boss fight that I'm very much looking forward to attempting myself. Fortunately, the wait isn't much longer now, as Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is set to release on June 21st. Thanks for watching, and for more Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, make sure to check out our video showing how to get to the DLC as quick as you can, along with our video showing what you should do to get ready before the DLC lands. And for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
Oh, not the parry. Okay, that was cool. I can't wait for Elden Ring. I'm gonna be off that week, so I'll definitely be able to play the DLC.